Hello, Showdown Nation. This is the MLB Showdown guru, Colby Talfus, and this is our fifth segment in our How to Play MLB Showdown series. Today we're going to be talking about defense. That came up because last week we were talking about how runners advance on outs, and the week before that we talked about how runners advance on hits. And that plays very much into how your league rules work and how the defense works. The two parts of the series before that on how the at-bat works. The first part of our series was the first roll, picking which of the two charts, the batters or the pitchers, we're going to use. The second part was how to determine what the result will be after on your second roll. So those are referred to as the at-bat and the swing. Today we're going to be talking about defense and how that works in MLB Showdown. So we're going to zoom down to my little mock field here. As you can see, there are 8 defensive players when it comes to MLB Showdown. You have your catcher, your 4 infielders, and your 3 outfielders. So first we're going to discuss the catchers. Catchers have their defense, which is right here, this little black thing. Technically, catchers do not have defense, for a little nuance here. Catchers have arms. That usually comes into play when we're talking about strategy cards. But they do not have a defense. They have an arm. Clear that up first off. Catcher's arms range from 0 to 11. Catcher's arms most usually come into play when we're talking about stolen base attempts. During a straight stolen base attempt, it is the catcher's arm plus the roll of a 20-sided dice versus the runner's speed. If the result is of the catcher's arm plus the roll is higher than the runner's speed, the runner is out. If not, the runner successfully steals the base. There are other strategy cards that affect other defensive situations, but as the most common instance, that is a stolen base attempt from first to second. On stolen base attempts from second to third, the catcher actually gets a bonus to his arm of +5 under most rules, though that can be adjusted based on how your league works. Our next set of fielders is our infield, which is composed of 4 players: the third baseman, shortstop, second baseman, and first baseman. Each of these fielders has a different value. Third basemen have a range of fielding 0 to 3, while second basemen and shortstops have a range of 0 to 5, and first basemen only have range of 0 to 1, being their fielding. That means the maximum infield in MLB Showdown is 14. This is most commonly used when referring to double plays. Double plays happen when there is a man on first and there is a ground ball result with less than 2 outs. In that instance, the man who was on first is out at second. You add up the 4 infielders, and then you make a roll using your 20-sided dice versus the batter's speed in this instance. If that total is greater than the batter's speed, you have a successful double play result, which again we remind you is a force out, so nobody scores on the advancement on a double play. Also, interesting fact, everybody qualifies for first base, even if they're not a positional first baseman. In this instance, Jason Giambi is a positional first baseman. But every single player can play first base. If a non-first baseman is playing first base, they get a -1 fielding, unless you have a DH. If a DH is playing first base, you have a -2 fielding. In some leagues, you cannot start a DH at first base. He can only come in later on, which we'll talk about in substitutions next week. But that is an interesting point, which allows for a lot of flexibility when making lineups and when adjusting lineups mid-game, is that every player does have the ability to play first base. The last part of our defense here is the outfield. You have 3 different outfielders. As you can see on this card, outfield have left-right for the corner outfielders. Nobody plays just left or right field in MLB Showdown. So if you have a player who you follow who only plays left or right consistently, they don't switch around, they actually have the ability to do that here in Showdown. So you could potentially have 2 real-life left fielders on your MLB Showdown team, just because that's how they chose to make it work. Corner outfielders have the potential to have a fielding score from 0 to 2, while center fielders, because they cover more ground, have the potential to go from 0 to 3. as you can see here with Ken Griffey Jr., he has a 2 when he's playing center field and a 1 when playing left or right field. Some center fielders may not be listed that way. They may be listed as outfield plus 1, 0, 1, or 2, and that means they have the same score when playing center field as when playing the corner outfield. That's just something to be aware of when picking your outfield. Outfield arms come into play sometime in some leagues, and this is something to be very clear about beforehand. There are leagues that play with no use for the outfield arm. They do not make outfield throws. In more advanced leagues, they do. This occurs when batters tag up on a fly ball from second to third, when they tag up on a fly ball from third to home, and it also applies on a single with a man on second. What normally happens is it is the outfield defense plus a roll versus the runner's speed, and the outfield defense gets a -5 if that throw happens to be going to home plate because it's a longer distance from the outfield to home plate. These are things to be very careful of when you're drafting and all that. You want to know what the rules are beforehand because certain fielders do not field well, but that may not hurt you. There are some cases where leagues say that man on second advances if he is a speed A on a fly ball without a throw, and B's and C's cannot advance in that instance. And also there are leagues where it says men on third base, if they are speed A or B, advance on a fly ball without a throw, and speed C's can't advance on a fly ball. So that's just something to be aware of when it comes to defense. So those are all the positions and their potential fielding scores in MLB Showdown. It's a very important part of the game, and as you play, you'll learn the value of it. And these can be supplemented with pitchers that exaggerate how good your defense can be. It's a very important part of the game, which ends up being more useful in advanced rules. For basic players, this may not be the most exciting part of it. Thank you guys for being with me. Remember to play for the card.